Hello everyone, I'm Maarten Wijnants from Hasselt University, and this talk will be about broadcast radio. Broadcast radio, sometimes also referred to as linear radio, is a popular medium with a long history and a rich tradition. Over the years, broadcast radio has witnessed competition from many types of technological innovations. Prime examples of such contenders are television, storage media like audio cassettes and compact discs, and most recently, music streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music. All these technological advancements have in common that they afford people additional choice and control over their listening experience and consumption patterns. Interestingly, this competition seems to have only a relatively modest impact on the popularity of radio among media consumers. As an example, recent measurements by the European Broadcasting Union show that the drop in the European population who listen to broadcast radio on a weekly basis is limited, and that the daily radio listening time of European citizens still equaled 2 hours and 23 minutes in 2019. Given that radio relatively succeeds in standing its ground in the contemporary media landscape, we pose the following research question. Does radio need to innovate itself in order to stay relevant in an era where consumers have grown accustomed to the flexibility and dynamism offered by music streaming platforms? To address our research question, we have applied a three-stage methodology, with the first step being an affinity diagram workshop with 12 people who are all professionally involved in broadcast radio. During the workshop, this educated group of people derived themes and associated keywords related to radio innovation based on their implicit knowledge of the state-of-the-art in the radio domain. The workshop results drove the design of the second stage of our methodology, which was a digital survey to explore people's opinion about promising radio innovation opportunities. Our survey led to some interesting data, both quantitatively and qualitatively, which unfortunately I cannot discuss here due to timing constraints. The third and final step of our methodology was an empirical study that was inspired by our survey results. In this mixed methods empirical study, we zoomed in on two radio innovation opportunities. The first being real-time radio content substitution. We defined this substitution concept as the ability to replace atomic items in the radio broadcast, like an individual song or an individual interview, with another atomic piece of content, with the listener automatically returning to the radio broadcast after the replacement content has finished playing. The second tested concept revolved around the involvement of listeners as radio content curators. Specifically, we prototyped a web application where radio listeners can vote for their preferred songs within a specific musical niche, like dubstep or synthpop. Listeners can optionally also share spoken messages in which they motivate their choices or share a relevant anecdote pertaining to their song selections. This all would then lead to a produced radio show that features a musical playlist that is populated with the most popular songs and that is intertwined with relevant speech fragments submitted by listeners. By pulling the results from the affinity diagram workshop, the survey and the empirical study, we derive 5 design recommendations for radio innovation. First of all, radio makers must never lose sight of the loyal listeners who enjoy radio's passive yet carefully curated listening experiences. Rather than blindly copying over features from music streaming services, innovation must keep traditional radio listeners satisfied by respecting radio's defining traits, like the fact that it offers a shared live experience and that it often fulfills a background function. Secondly, make sure to capitalize on radio's storytelling strengths by nurturing the craftsmanship of radio making, for example via innovative production tools or by facilitating the integration of user-generated content in radio production. Thirdly, aim to widen the reach and accessibility of ephemeral radio content by affording greater consumption flexibility, for example by supporting on-demand listening to radio content. Fourthly, personalization is deemed a good candidate to consider in every radio innovation attempt, not only in live contexts, like for example the tested substitution concept, but also in combination with offline consumption. However, personalization opportunities must be optional, so that traditional listeners can opt out of using them. Also, users must have insight into how and why personalization choices were made and must have the power to overrule them. Finally, let users flexibly choose between a traditional lean-back radio experience and a more demanding, but possibly also more rewarding, lean-forward type of radio consumption. One option to realize lean-forward radio consumption is via configurable personalization options, which we've discussed in design recommendation 4. Thank you for your attention.